Carson Show.
Joining us on the Newsmax hotline, Mark Meckler, the president of Convention of States, also works with the Trafalgar Group. They do some terrific polling. We'll get to that. Mark, welcome to the Rob Carson Show. How are you, sir?
I am great. Always good to be with you, Rob.
Did you hear the good news today about the economy? Did you know? No, this is for real, man. Listen to this. Inflation apparently has ticked down a little bit. The Federal Reserve raising interest rates and collapsing the housing market to get inflation under control have now decreased inflation to only 700 times percent more high than it was when Donald Trump was the president. That's the good news. So
I'm thinking I'm going to go out. I'm going to buy a magnum of champagne, a couple of hot dogs, and roast them out over my trash heap because I can't afford anything else.
Well, pretty much, yeah. You don't want to have some eggs. I think you'd be better off just buying some champagne. Let's talk about what's going on in the country. I want to get going with the one of the reasons why we have you on today is there's a new poll you guys have done, the Trafalgar Group has done with regard to the chairmanship of the Republican National Committee. Harmeet Dillon has emerged as a leading candidate against Ronna McDaniel, and you've done some polling on it, and it appears that maybe the Republican Party is ready to move on.
Well, when we look at the rebellion that took place in Congress over the last week over the speakership and how the grassroots supported that, and now we look at what's going on at the RNC. Last week we polled and found out only 6% of Republican voters wanted Ronna McDaniel to stay in her position.
Wow.
So we polled this week to find out, well, who do they want? And the two, as you said, that are really in the running, Ronna McDaniel and Harmeet Dillon, 86% of Republican voters say they support Harmeet Dillon.
Wow. Dude, that would mean that Ronna McDaniel has Mitch McConnell numbers.
Yeah, it is. I mean, she's in the basement. And it's been interesting because she was asked about our poll last week. This one just broke today, so she hasn't been asked about it yet. She was asked about our poll last week, and she said, it's a bogus poll. It was conducted at some kind of convention of states, and it's just the numbers are bogus if you look at the data. She clearly hadn't looked at it.
Yeah.
She obviously doesn't know what Convention of States is.
No.
And it's the Trafalgar Group poll, which is one of America's most respected pollsters. So I think she's in big trouble. I think she put her foot in her mouth last week. I expect she's not going to be happy when she sees this one.
Well, I think the American people are very disappointed with the performance of the Republican Party. They attempted to destroy Donald Trump with it. They attempted to make it look like Donald Trump was the reason why we didn't have the red wave. I have a dozen reasons why that didn't happen.
Agreed.
But it wasn't because of Donald Trump. And it's funny because despite it all, and really the full frontal assault on Donald Trump, which it's been going on for 6 years, they raided Mar-a-Lago. They tried to make it look like he was a criminal. They thought that the FBI's image would be enough to make a pre-dawn raid with agents, make us think that Donald Trump was guilty. And all it did was make people go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and vote for Donald Trump because honestly, these people are freaking corrupt. It really backfired on him, Mark. And I think that how's the polling? You've done any polls lately on? Obviously, the big thing is Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis. Depending on the poll, I see Trump out front. I see DeSantis out front. You throw another person in there, Trump goes out in front. How's that going? Do you have any idea what the American people are feeling right now about 2024?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't pulled that directly, but I can tell you from traveling around, from talking to grassroots, it's really interesting. This is anecdotal. Obviously, the plural of anecdote is data. And so I believe I've collected a bunch of data on this. And what I would tell you is people are just frustrated. Even people who are big Trump supporters, I'm hearing a lot of frustration with Trump. I saw this a lot when he issued his trading cards, which I hesitate to even say that because I think it was an absolute embarrassment for the president of the United States, former president of the United States, to issue trading cards with himself as a superhero on them. And people just said, look, that's not serious stuff. And we're serious people living in a serious country undergoing serious challenges. So a lot of people I've seen are frustrated with him. They were frustrated when he started attacking DeSantis. And these are people who are Trump fans. And so I think Trump hasn't done himself any favors by some of the decisions he's made over the last year.
Yeah, Mark, I felt the same way when the trading cards came out originally, and then I realized that, hey, he just raised $5 million in a day. So, who's who's the fool here? I know what you mean, Mark, but he raised a ton of money doing that, and I think it kind of it really flummoxed a lot of people. So anyway, let's move on to I've got to talk to you about convention of states, and I've been listening to Levin lately, and while I disagree with some of the machinations that he's had with regard to Kevin McCarthy, the process of choosing Kevin McCarthy becoming so public, which I thought was wonderful. Levin is still saying that we aren't going to be able to affect a ton of change in Congress. I mean, fundamental change back to, I shouldn't say fundamental, but change back to the founding principles of the country unless we do a convention of states. Remind everybody what a convention of states would do and what we got to do to get there.
Sure. Article 5 of the Constitution contains two ways that we can amend the Constitution. First is Congress proposes whenever 2/3 of each house wants to, and then they put it out to the states for ratification by 3/4 of the states. The second way that we've never used is when 2/3 of the states decide to gather in convention, they can do so. They can debate and propose amendments, and then in the exact same way, those amendments go out to the states for ratification. So that's never been done before, and it's one of the reasons we never have gotten limitations on Congress out of amendments. And so if we want to limit Congress's power, if we want to impose term limits on Congress, if we want to impose a balanced budget on Congress, if we want to take away their power over education, energy, healthcare, and the environment, things they were never intended to have, we're going to have to call a convention of states. So that's what our organization is dedicated to at conventionofstates.com. It takes 34 states to call a convention. So far, 19 states have done it. A whole bunch more are in action already this session. Iowa, Idaho, Kansas, Wyoming, Montana, Ohio. These are states that have a good chance of passing this year, and they're in action right now.
Well, Mark, and we're talking to Mark Meckler of Convention of States and Trafalgar Group. I think if you looked at polling before the midterms, literally 70% of the people in the country felt the country is going the wrong way, both parties. That to me says that Americans are still loving America. The one thing that the class of 1968 have not been able to do is make us hate America. They tried to get us to kneel. They tried to make us feel terrible. They tore down our statues and all this, but we haven't stopped hating America. And that means Democrats too. As much as I think there are plenty of flyover Democrats, Roosevelt Democrats like my dad, younger generations and whatnot, I do believe that they're not down with sexualization of children, dear God in heaven. And I think that we're at a turning point as far as the country is concerned, and I think this is going to be a bellwether year. You look at what's happening right now with investigations to come into Congress. When you look at just the last 2 days with regard to Joe Biden and the media actually seriously pursuing allegations that he took classified documents, to me it says maybe the American people are sick and damned tired of the malfeasance, of the abuses and usurpations by Washington, D.C., and maybe this is a turning point. Maybe this means finally convention of states.
Yeah, I do think it is a turning point, not just for convention of states. I think we see parents rising up against the woke madness in their schools, against the madness of gender ideology, childhood mutilation. We see these bills pending in legislatures all around the country to prevent childhood mutilation, some of that being led by Matt Walsh at the Daily Wire. There's a great bill in Tennessee that our activists are supporting. I think there are similar bills in Ohio and Texas getting ready to come out of the legislatures. So I think there's an uprising taking place, and that uprising tends toward traditional values, and it also knows that the solutions aren't going to come from Washington, D.C. So we do see convention of states popping up more and more in the mainstream. Rob, we're getting targeted by the left on a radical basis consistently now. Right after the new year, there was a huge hit piece in the New Republic. We've seen it in Business Insider, New York Times, ABC, and they're talking on the left about convention of states and saying how dangerous it is, because what we want to do is basically go back to the enumerated powers and something close to the original Constitution. So they're telling the truth in that regard. They just don't like it.
I'm going to tell you, Mark, they're also freaking out on Capitol Hill about the investigations of the swamp. I mean, massively. We've seen all of the abuses. We've felt them. We saw, and we know now that the FBI, the DHS, and other government agencies were deeply involved in censoring speech about COVID, speech about the elections and election impropriety. You couldn't say anything about there. I've got 50 or 60 things that out of nowhere in the last 2 years, the government decided was misinformation or disinformation. And the reason we were able to find that out is because all of those things had been banned on social media and the mainstream media as those things. So it's clear there was a definite, concerted effort by governments, not just ours, but governments and big mass media companies to toe a party line, a government lineup, maybe a New World Order line, whatever, and do it. And the American people see that now, and they're going, we're done with this. And maybe this is the point where the American people are saying, we're it's time to turn things around.
Yeah, look, I think the big question right now isn't whether the American people see it. It's not whether the left is freaking out that they see it. All those things I think are factually provable and true. The question is, what will the government actually do about it? What will Washington, D.C. do about it? Will they make any turns? Will they make any reforms? And that's where I remain skeptical because I've been doing politics now 13 years. Yeah. I was part of the Tea Party movement. I watched the IRS target Tea Party folks. There was a huge investigation. The IG said that they did it, and then nothing happened. There were not even any reforms. Nobody was punished.
Well, what about the Church Commission in the 1970s supposed to reform the FBI? Didn't happen.
No, in fact, the Church Commission is what gave us the FISA courts, which give us these horrible warrants during the Trump administration. Wow. So what we know is that rarely, if ever, do the real reforms come out of Washington, D.C. That's why I'm so passionate about Convention of States, so passionate about working at the state level, so passionate about getting people involved at conventionofstates.com, because I don't believe the government's going to fix it themselves. No. I believe it's up to us, Rob.
Yeah, I think we're being also a gigantic, we've always had of the media industrial complex. We've heard of the military industrial complex. Now we certainly know what appears to be the higher education industrial complex is very big with the Penn Biden Center. I want to ask you one more question. Do you have an electric or a gas stove at home there, Mark? I am and
have always been and will always be a gas stove guy. They can pry that out of my cold, dead fingers.
I'm thinking that whole idea, that trial balloon that they attempted, they never even realized what a backlash they would get from not only the restaurant business, but also from you and me, because we all know if you are worth your salt as far as cooking, gas is the way to do it.
Yeah, look, I would add one more thing is I don't think this is an accident. I think they want everybody tied into the electric grid for absolutely everything.
Yep.
Then they put smart meters on your house, and then if you're not a good little comrade, then they have the ability to shut you off from the grid and 100%. Freeze you out and starve you to death. And I don't think that's an overstatement. No. I think they're looking for that kind of control.
I don't doubt that one little bit, but I would encourage those who really embrace global warming, climate change, ozone hole, murder hornet, killer bees, those people, if you believe that having a gas stove in your kitchen is like leaving your car running in your kitchen with the engine going, then I would suggest if you have a gas furnace, you immediately shut it off no matter where you live. If you are a libtard, a climate alarmist, you need to turn your furnace off right now, no matter how cold it is, just to save the planet. I'll just throw that out there, Mark.
I'm with you. Look, if the folks who promote all this global warming insanity would actually live the lifestyle that they say all the rest of us should live, then I might take it more seriously, but they don't. They're hypocrites because they know it's not true. It's just virtue signaling, and it makes them feel good.
Yes, it does. Okay, so, and they'll never be invited to my home for dinner. Thank you very much. All right, so let's make this the year right here, Mark, 2023, conventionofstates.com. Go there, help them out. I know you said you're going to be on with Tucker next week, among others. Certainly you'll be on Newsmax as well. I think this could be a real good year for you and for freedom-loving Americans, to be honest.
Well, I'm looking forward to making it a good one with you, Rob, so thanks for having me.